It seems that Scotiabank subscribes to a stanza from the song Home on the Range, you know, where seldom is heard a discouraging word. But here's the rub. Why does this bank seem to tolerate certain types of hatred? I speak of Scotiabank executive Ryan Malak, who is not just a banker, but a vile anti-Semite, so much so that he's not afraid to openly post on social media how much he hates Jews and the state of Israel. Indeed, you may recall that last week we paid a house call to Scotiabank's headquarters in downtown Toronto. It was all about trying to get answers regarding Malak and the vile garbage he's been posting for the past couple of years. Check it out. There is a gentleman that works here by the name of Ryan Malak. He is the Senior Credit Structuring Manager with Scotiabank. And guess what? This man is obsessed with denialism and Jew hatred. And yes, we have the proof in his own words, taken from social media postings. For example, that Toronto synagogue I mentioned that's been vandalized 10 times in 18 months, he says it's a false flag done by Jews and that they, quote, play victim all the time, end quote. Malak also believes that there is a, quote, Jewish lobby that makes you wonder who really runs things, end quote. Malak also states that Jews complain about, quote, how shitty they are, end quote. Oh, it just goes on. And here is something that tells you how much of a reprobate this guy is. Here's what he said in a post referencing a Holocaust survivor meeting the mother of a hostage from the October 7th, 2023 massacre in Israel. He said, quote, Jewish propaganda is unmatched, end quote. It's unbelievable. Malak also goes on to state all kinds of crackpot conspiracy theories regarding so-called Jewish privilege, the action of classic Jews, his words, in terms of the war in the Middle East, and, quote, Jews meddling in other countries' elections, end quote. It just goes on and on. But as odious as those statements are, here's where I think Malak crosses the line. It's his desire that meteors fall on Israel, killing its civilian population. And he also goes on to celebrate the October 7th massacre, which of course killed more Jews in one day than any other day since the Holocaust. This is just incredible. And what's really disturbing, folks, these weren't private postings uncovered. No, Mr. Malak was putting these postings out on social media for the entire world to see. So let's try to square this circle, shall we? Scotiabank is adamant that it is all about inclusivity. So by tolerating the hatred being spewed by Malak, including that perverse fantasy of his in which Israeli citizens should die in a meteor shower, are we to assume that Scotiabank is being inclusive of Islamist doctrine? Is this Canadian bank, in the name of DEI, now down with the jihadis? Is this financial institution perfectly okay with the global intifada because this represents equity? Does this bank believe that calling out Jew hatred might be somehow interpreted as Islamophobia? I mean, that's almost as bad as transphobia after all. Now, is this conjecture on my part, folks? Well, yes, of course it is. So then what does the bank have to say? Great question. But nobody at Scotiabank will engage with us, from Claire Dawson, the bank's head media relations flack, all the way up to its president and CEO, Scott Thompson. And another thing, we know for certain that Scotiabank is not sheepish when it comes to terminating its staffers. For example, just last month, the bank handed out more than 2,500 pink slips. And in 2023, Scotiabank cut about 3% of its global workforce. That works out to about 2,700 positions. The bank stated that these mass firings were being conducted in the name of, quote, improving efficiency, end quote. Golly, is Scotiabank struggling to keep afloat these days? Hardly. In August, it was reported that the Bank of Nova Scotia beat analysts' third quarter expectations after posting higher profits in its global banking and markets segment. The bank's net income for the 3 months ending July 31st was $2.53 billion compared to just $1.9 billion during the same period a year ago. By the way, in the Department of Perverse Irony, I came across a Bloomberg news story published on the exact same day the bank posted its rosy net income figures. The headline read, quote, Scotiabank executive says youth bearing the most financial strain, end quote. Oh, you don't say. I wonder how many young people had to endure financial strain thanks to Scotiabank axing its workforce by more than 5,000 employees in the space of 2 years. But never mind. One thing is certain, there won't be a tag day needed this Christmas for Scotiabank's head honcho, Scott Thompson. Earlier this year, the CEO received a 27% raise. He's now making $9.76 million this year, compared to just $6.8 million in 2024. Think about those figures next time you have to pay one of those onerous bank service charges. In any event, Mille Lacs was not a casualty when it came to those mass layoffs, even though it appears he was breaching the bank's code of conduct. What's more, when it comes to the Mille Lacs saga, an old public relations phrase springs to mind. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. Translation, sometimes hiding a wrongdoing can be worse than the actual offense. And I think that's what we have here with Scotiabank. The bank seemingly went out of its way to protect Mille Lacs, hoping the whole vile affair would just go away. Until, that is, Scotiabank could no longer weather the bad publicity shite storm. Only then did the bank toss aside Mille Lacs. Yet the timeline is fascinating, wouldn't you say? Given that Mille Lacs has been posting his anti-Jew hatred for years, does anyone believe that senior people at Scotiabank were completely oblivious to his crackpot rants? After all, Scotiabank has approximately 88,000 employees. Even if senior management was asleep at the switch when it came to Mille Lacs' odious postings, don't you think that at least one of those 88,000 employees would blow the whistle on this anti-Semite by reaching out anonymously? Secondly, consider this. I began contacting Scotiabank's useless media relations team a week ago regarding Mille Lacs. That means as of a week ago, the bank was indeed fully aware they had a vile Jew hater on the payroll. But again, they chose to do nothing. And I think I know the reason why Chief Spokesthingy Claire Dawson and her moronic minions believe that if they simply said nothing, then our story would die on the vine. Newsflash, the story did not perish. Instead, we reported that Rebel News sought comment, and the bank refused to comment. By the way, if Scotiabank is looking to fire more employees, how about the entire media relations department, given that it does not relate to the media? But the point is, the bank no longer had an excuse that they were unaware of Mille Lacs' online hatred. They had at least a week to get ahead of this story, yet Scotiabank chose not to do so. That was a very bad choice. Because fast forward to last Monday afternoon when our story about Mille Lacs was published, and can you believe it? Within hours of this story making the rounds, it appears Scotiabank did indeed fire Mille Lacs. Our friend Leviathan told me that all of Mille Lacs' official contact information has now been scrubbed from Scotiabank's website. And I was also tipped off by a source in the financial services sector that on Tuesday, November 11th, at 12:21 p.m. to be precise, Scotiabank CEO Thompson proclaimed in an email that Mille Lacs had been terminated because, quote, there is no role for hate, end quote. Oh, you don't say. By the way, I did reach out yet again for comment regarding Mille Lacs. I contacted the bank's media relations team and Thompson and Mille Lacs himself to confirm the news, but shockers, it's still radio silence. What an amazing PR strategy Scotiabank embraces, eh? But here's my hunch, and it will forever remain a hunch, given that the people at Scotiabank are too cowardly when it comes to facing the music and providing comment. If Rebel News had not exposed Rayan Malak, publicly that is, I dare say that Rayan Malak would still be gainfully employed at Scotiabank. I think everyone from the CEO on down would hold their collective noses, look the other way, and allow Malak to continue posting his anti-Semitic diatribes. I think the bank was initially mortified to rein in Malak because that might be seen as, well, culturally insensitive. It's both crazy and cowardly. Gary Duke in Grand Prairie and Jane in Toronto were debanked in a nanosecond just for asking supposed insensitive queries vis-a-vis the Rainbow Mafia. And when the federal government told Scotiabank and its competitors to freeze bank accounts of those donating to the Freedom Convoy, the bank slavishly did so, as in immediately. They could have, and they should have, refused. Just like Canada's insurance companies refused to bend the knee to Trudeau and cancel the insurance policies of the so-called undesirables. But no, the banks gleefully complied. They chose the path of least resistance, and in doing so, they betrayed their own loyal clientele. Oh, and this just in, folks, just a few hours before recording, a source told me he reached out to Jenny Poulos, who is Scotiabank's director of HR, regarding the status of Rayan Malak. And talk about the Christmas miracle, he actually received a response indicating that Malak was indeed shown the door. Here is the email he received from the bank, quote, "Thank you for your email dated November 10th, 2025. First and foremost, we truly value your relationship with us. Thank you for bringing this issue to our attention and for your continued vigilance in ensuring that the bank's relationships reflect the values of respect, diversity, and inclusivity," end quote. Jesus, they just can't stop themselves from regurgitating their woke DEI talking points. Anyway, the response continues, quote, "As of the date of this communication, the referenced employee is not a Scotiabank employee. As a bank, we are unequivocally committed to being a provider of financial services that is inclusive and respectful. We condemn all forms of racism and discrimination as outlined in our Code of Conduct, which we require all employees globally to sign annually. We thank you for bringing this matter to our attention and have shared your communication with the appropriate department for further review. Respectfully, due to internal personnel information, no additional details will be shared," end quote. Yeah, that's right, because even vile anti-Semites denying the Holocaust and advocating for genocide, they're entitled to their privacy. Give me a break. But in the final analysis, when it comes to Rayan Malak, Scotiabank did the right thing for the wrong reason. Scotiabank didn't fire Malak because of his ongoing anti-Semitic posts on social media. Rather, Scotiabank fired this hater because Scotiabank received a major PR black eye. The termination of Malak had nothing to do with decency. It had everything to do with Scotiabank trying to cover its corporate ass due to the heaping helping of negative press. Oh, not that you'll find any reports about this sordid story in the mainstream media, mind you, especially given that, Scotiabank is an advertiser flush with cash. P.S. In the Department of Full Disclosure, I have a Scotiabank account. Oh, I can hear you folks. You're likely screaming at me. Are you crazy, Menzies? Close your account already. This bank is garbage. Don't do business with woke bullies. But here's the thing, folks. After publication of this monologue, I fully believe Scotiabank will cancel my account for me. I'm quite certain that much like Gary Duke and Jane, I shall receive a registered letter in the days ahead, noting that my values do not align with Scotiabank's values. It's also perverse, isn't it? Indeed, the way certain customers are treated by Scotiabank would seem to go completely against the bank's well-crafted feel-good imagery, wouldn't you say? Here, check out this slice of Scotiabank propaganda.
Ever feel like no matter what you've got, someone's got more? And someone's got more than that. More style, more to spend. So you work to get a little more, and a little more. But the more you get, the more everyone else seems to have. And just when you think there couldn't possibly be any more, you realize there's more to life than more. You're richer than you think. Scotiabank.
Yeah, you're richer than you think until you're not. In fact, I think a more appropriate slogan for this bank, all things considered, and given the state of Canada under the Mark Carney Liberals, would be, you're poorer than you think. And of course, my impending future termination for daring to speak truth to power will have absolutely nothing to do with values and a whole lot more to do with vengeance, as Scotiabank embraces that old strategy known as shoot the messenger. Because at Scotiabank, that's how they roll. It's their way or the highway. And you want to know the really sad part, folks? Well, it's this. I doubt that the rest of the woke big banks in Canada are that much better.